Welcome to Attican Plays Rise of Industry. All right, hi, this is Attican, and welcome to a brand new series, a new game I'm going to cover on the channel. It's called Rise of Industry, and when I say new game, I'm not kidding. This is actually an alpha, so it is not completed. It's not out there as a full game yet, but it is available on Steam. I've been studying it now for a couple of weeks and just getting into the ins and outs of it and really trying to understand the mechanics of the game, because as you know, I like to really understand the game before I start covering it so that I'm not just doing Let's Plays, but I'm doing something that hopefully adds some value to each of you and allows you to become better players. So let's just I'm going to skip most of the big intro stuff. You guys can figure this stuff out for yourself, but I do want to give you just a general idea of the game. You've got two modes you can play in, career and sandbox. Sandbox basically says you don't have to do research, you don't have to buy permits from you just go build, and that's it's a sandbox. Boring for me, boring. If you like that, have a good time, but boring to me. I want a game that makes me do things and think, and career mode definitely will, and I'll show you in a minute how you can set it up and make it a difficult game and all the research you have to do and everything. So career mode is where we'll spend our time. There is a tutorial over here. Everything I'm highlighting is clickable and you can just move to it, but there's a tutorial that'll kind of help you. Like most games now, it's a big trend, especially with YouTube and I guess guys like me out here and all the good Let's Play people out there doing their Let's Play stuff. These games are really skimping on the tutorials. This one has a little bit. It'll tell you a little bit about the game. There's a guide out here by this Ghanaian that's actually, these are pretty good. He talks really fast, really hard to understand and I don't mean to be critical, Ghanaian, sorry. But he talks really fast, hard to understand, but the stuff he gives is excellent. So if you take your time, I actually watched all his videos and watched them repeatedly until I understood what he was saying and went through them and worked them out for myself. And very helpful information there. And then, of course, Catherine of Sky, probably most of you know her. Seems like a lovely lady. In fact, they say she's lovely, so she must be. But a lovely lady who plays kind of she's a very good game player, but she plays sort of what I would call the moist finger in the air kind of approach, where she sort of, oh, this seems like it'll work, and then she does it, and then when it doesn't work, she adjusts it until it does work. And she's a very good player and fun to watch her. I've watched a few minutes of her playing 2 or 3 games, and that seems to be her style. But anyway, I go out there and watch Catherine play. Again, she is a good player. As you know, I'm a little different, though. I like to truly understand the game and really get down to the nuts and bolts of the mechanics. So we're going to go into career mode. So let's just click that. And I want to show you the different ways you can play. And let's just start with normal mode. So first of all, up here, you can adjust which side of the road your vehicles drive on. You know, those of you from the UK can go to the left. Almost all the rest of us can go to the right, with a few exceptions. And you can have town names that look like they come from the U.S., England, Germany, or Spain. You can have a medium, small, or large map size. You can decide whether or not town industries are spawned by the AI. You can also decide how many rivers you have in your map. And it's weird, and I'm showing you in a minute how this difficulty is modified. There's no modification for the size of the map, and I would argue a small map is way harder than any other size map. And a large map would be by far the easiest one to play, but there's no change there. The other one is the river generation. I would argue that the more rivers you have running through and cutting up your territory, making it hard to build roads, obviously the more difficult it is, but there's no change for that. But anyway, they have these preset difficulties. So normal, everything is kind of just that, normal. There's no modifiers. It's a 100% game. So you have a certain amount of loan, you have a certain amount of demand, you get a certain price for your products generally, you get resource availability, the different events like hurricanes and union strikes and developments that make your production better, and all these kinds of things are kind of standard. You get some good, some bad. And your upkeep of your buildings is normal, and sending out trucks to haul stuff is a normal cost, and you can change the landscape if you need to. Use the terraforming tools. Now let's go back. Some people would play this newcomer mode, which is the super easy. You get higher amounts of money, there's more demand, the pricing is better, you get more money each time you deliver something and sell it. There's more resources available. You're going to get a whole bunch of great events and very few bad ones, maybe no bad ones, I don't know. Your upkeep and your cost of your vehicles is smaller, that's easy, okay? Then normal, then we go to veteran. So if you're a little bit better, you just make things a little bit harder. And then the final preset they have is startup, which is the hardest preset. It's not the hardest you could possibly make the game. There are a few of these that you could see. Now that one, that 10 million is as hard as it can get. But if we go down here to, where's one that's, oh, here we go. We could change the event difficulty to mayhem, which would make it, we're just getting hurricanes and floods and disaster after disaster. I think these are as high as they can go. Yeah, they are. You can tell by these little dots over here. So resource availability looks like it could go up. No, it can't. Sorry, I can't see very well. Oh, here we go. Resource availability of 50%. That's a little bit harder. So basically, if you have all these out here as far as you can get them, and I don't even know if you'll be able to see this, but all these little, there's a dot right here. If you make them all as hard as they can get, you can get 275% difficulty. That would be right now as hard as you can make it. But let's go back to our startup preset because that's easy to get. I think I'm going to actually, believe it or not, start with this harder setting. Reason being, I think it'll be a great way for me to be able to talk through some of the concepts, like the how you pushing and pulling goods and how you distribute goods and move goods and stuff with this kind of a setup, even more so than normal. Because normal, you can just start building. After you get used to it, it's very easy once you learn a few very key concepts. Okay, so let's just start here. So I'm going to hit play, and we're going to start a new game. Okay, so the game generated a map for us, and I went up here and put this name in, Buffalo Gap Startup Diner, and basically the name is the city that we start with, the difficulty I use startup, and the first key building we have is a diner, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So here's our map. Let's just take a quick look. It's a medium-sized map, and you can see there's one city up there, Buffalo Gap, that's pretty good size. There's a small city over here, Clearview, nearby. We've got a planning office, which means that there's a region here that we might want to work in and get resources from, but there's no cities, and we would work with their office to do stuff with that, and I'll explain that later on when we get to it. There's a lot of things to talk about, but just to give you an idea, see this purpley, I don't know what color that is, whatever color that is. See, that's the boundary for this region over here, the Buffalo Gap region. So if once you have the rights to do so, you could build in this region. But if you wanted to go into these other regions, like the Kitzmiller Planning Office or Clearview, you would have to buy the rights, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So let's just continue looking at the map. We've got a small town down here of Reno. All these small towns will have a farmer's market, which buys kind of basic, produce and veggies and milk and stuff like that, and a hardware store, which typically does wood, oil, gas, maybe wool, raw rubber, sand, cotton, and coal. That would be a typical hardware store, but they aren't all the same. Particularly like the farmer's market, there are different things that different farmers markets will buy, and that becomes that matters to us later on, perhaps. So now we got a couple more small cities. This Atmotlock. I don't know where in the United States that would be created, unless it's an Inuit name or something. And Eastville, that's pretty American there. And then Sun City Center, sounds like a retirement area. And see, it's got its own region. So now, let's look at the key thing that you want to look at. Let's go back to the place where they brought us in. Now, we do not have to start here. This is where they kind of started us. If you think when the map was created, this is where it left us. But if we look at Buffalo Gap, it has the farmer's market and the hardware store, but it also has a third store, a third shop, a diner. And this is the key building. The building we want to focus on is that any building past the farmer's market and the hardware store. Now, on normal mode or easier mode, you could actually create little simple products like wood. Like here, this guy takes wood. We could build a little wood business, which would be very cheap to set up. We could run the wood into Buffalo Gap and sell it at the hardware store and make a profit, and we'd be fine. On the mode we're on, where our costs are higher and our price we get is lower, and I've tested this, if we were to set up a wood business right here, and I've done this on other maps, but if we'd set a wood business right here, run that wood into the hardware store and sell it, and have a nice steady supply of wood coming in, we would steadily lose $11,000, $12,000, $14,000 a month, whatever it is. We would lose money every month doing that. So what we need to do is get to products that are more involved. And that comes down to these tiers. So what happens here is they have this thing called a recipe book. So if we look at, for example, berry pies. Berry pies, you can see the average price is $1.49 million per unit. Now, if we look at yeast, the price is $59,000 per unit. So obviously berry pies you can guess berry pies are a much more involved process. So when I click on this over here, it opens up this recipe book, which I could also click up here and get. And it shows me a berry pie. And it says that a berry pie, you can create one berry pie every 30 days as long as you provide it. Sorry, I got to scoot up and see this, 9 grapes and 6 dough. So we have to create dough and grapes and feed them to a berry pie factory, which will then create berry pies. Well, the berries also have things they need. In this case, water. The berry, for every field you have of berries, it can create 2 berries in 30 days, but it needs 2 water. And notice different time period, different amounts created, different needs. So this is going to get very complex very fast. So we need dough for our berry pies. Dough needs 4 flour, 1 water, and it will produce 2 dough every 40 days. So again, different time period, different needs, and these needs, now water is as low as you can go on the tier-wise. Water is a basic element, but flour, whoops, I skipped through one. Flour needs 3 wheat for every flour factory to make 2 flour in 20 days. So again, a different unit of time, different product needed, and our wheat, by the way, needs water for every field to make 2 wheat every 30 days. It needs 2 water. So I hope you can see how this is getting to be a real head spinner when you look at where all this stuff is taking us. So let's get back to our berry pies. So I typed in berry up here, and I get berry pie and berry smoothie. Okay, now my berry pies, I want to make berry pies and sell them for $1.57 million each. Now that price will swing up and down with supply and demand and with economic conditions, but that's roughly what we'll get. And right now it's a little high price. It's 105% of its normal price. All right, so when I first started playing, my head was literally spinning at this point, trying to do all these calculations. And I said, this has got to go. So of course I made a spreadsheet. So I made a spreadsheet that does a build plan for us and has all the data for the costs and products. So when you want to set up a business, just thinking as a businessman or as a game player, you would want to know, what do I need to build in order to have an efficient supply chain? And this, by the way, is the critical part of the game, having efficient supply chains. I would want an efficient supply chain that gave each of these things what they need in a proper quantity without overproducing, so that it could then feed up to it. So remember, our berry pies need dough and berries. The dough needs flour and water. The berries need water, the flour needs wheat, the wheat needs water. So if you take all that into account, this spreadsheet goes out, figures all that out, and says to have one berry pie food factory, we need a food factory to one of those. We need to, in order to keep that one going all the time, we would need 4 dough factories. Down here we need 4 flour factories. We also need 5 fields of berries growing on a plantation or plantations. We also need 9 fields of wheat growing on crop farms to feed all this stuff, to feed the flour. And we need water to feed the wheat and the berries, and the dough even needs some water. So we need a certain amount of water. So this spreadsheet calculates all that out, takes into account all the ratios and everything, actually reduces everything down to its daily output and uses the daily numbers to drive the calculations and figures out what we need. And it also figures out the other thing you need is not just what do I need, but how much is it going to cost me to build this. And so it goes out and looks up the costs of all these items and figures out one food factory is going to cost me $500,000. 4 naturally will cost me $2 million. These 4 will cost me $2 million. This plantation will cost me the base cost of a plantation plus 5 fields to plant at that plantation, so it will cost me $650,000. Da 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 da. And so that's what the basic cost would be. Now I call it base cost because it's not exact, because we don't know for sure how many. How much road work we would have to do and that kind of thing. And if we had to do any terraforming, that's very expensive if you have to move the earth a little bit to make it all work. So, but this gives you a general basic idea of how much it's going to cost you. And it also calculates, am I actually over creating anything? Because these ratios will not work out perfectly. You can't, there's probably some number of berry pies I could set in here that would give me a nice 0 surplus on everything. But this is not it. 1 is not it. But 1 is what we could afford to do. And by the way, I'll go back. There's demand. We know that demand for berry pies in that city is 1 every 15 days. So if I look at berry pies and its production, that means I need 2 berry pies to fully do that demand. So if I set this berry pies up to 2, it'll recalculate everything and tell me what I need to create for everything here. And by the way, it won't necessarily be exactly doubled, because if you'll notice, like berries went from 5 to 9. That's because we get a little economy of scale going on here. Oh, and by the way, here is one. Look at this. See, our monthly surplus is 0. So if we could actually afford to build 2 berry pies, we would actually get a perfect ratio. We would get 2 berry pies, 8 dough, 9 fields of berries, 8 factories, 20 harvesters of water, and 18 crops of fields of wheat, and a partridge in a pear tree, of course. So all that would cost us like $14 million. Well, we've only got 5 to start with, so that's not going to happen. But to give us a planning idea, we need 1. Now, I know I haven't played the game 1 second, and I apologize. Some of you are probably already gone. Well, you're not listening to me, are you? You're already gone. I've already lost people because they're already bored, but man, this game requires a little discussion. All right, so let's actually play the game. So let's go back to our game here and say, okay, we kind of know what we need to do. Our ultimate goal is to get the berry pies, but we only have $5 million. And we've got, by the way, we need to research all this stuff. So we have to spend a bunch of money to research. And actually, I'm going to add that to the spreadsheet eventually, the initial research costs. But for now, I can tell you that to do berry pies, let's just look at it. Here's our research tree. If we go to food, we come down here and we see berry pies. Well, to get to a berry pie, we have to have all these things that go up the chain. So if I click berry pie, see, I've got to do wheat, I've got to research flour, dough, water, berries. I think I already had the water. And then eventually to berry pie. And you can see the cost go from berry pies are $200K down here to a tier 3 berry pie. It's $5.6 million just to research berry pie. We only got $5 million, remember. So we won't be getting there yet. Okay? But what we can do is for a pretty reasonable cost It's still going to be very expensive, but we can research dough and have a tier 2 business, because if we look in our diner, they also take one dough each 15 days. So if we go back to our spreadsheet now, we kind of have an idea of what berry pies look like. But if we reset this and say, well, what if I want to make dough? Dough is my end product. You can see here, to meet their goal, you need 1.33 buildings. Now, we don't ever want to overproduce, because then we're spending more money, can't sell the goods that we're making, and we're running up our costs without making more profit. So we're going to build one dough factory to meet the needs as close as we can in that city. And then this tells us that we only need one dough, one flour, 2 water, and 3 wheat. Much more reasonable. Okay, and that's only going to cost us about 1.9 million plus some roads and stuff, plus our research. So that is a way we can possibly go. So actually, I know that it is a way we can go. So we've already queued that up, so we're going to research all that stuff for dough. And the other thing we're going to do is, on our research budget, you can say how much you want to spend each month, from 0 up to $5 million a month on research. And you can just let this run at some slow pace, like 100K a month, and try to constantly keep plugging things in to keep your research going and keep it as a nice steady stream draw from your budget. Remember what I said, though, in this startup and more difficult mode, these lower end goods, I can't make cocoa and sell it and expect to make money. I can't harvest wood and sell it and expect to make money. I need to get down here to the really tier 2 and tier 3 products. So we are going to put $5 million a month into our research. Now, that doesn't mean we're necessarily going to spend $5 million, but it does mean that we are going to spend at that rate. So some of these can be done. See, now dough can be done in 11 days, and see, at 100K, it would take us almost 3 years before we could even create dough. So we're going to bump that up. We're going to research dough in 11 days. So now we've got, our strategy is to try to get a dough business going in Buffalo Gap. And by the way, didn't finish this off, but in Sun City, it also has a diner, which is nice, and it also takes dough. And if we wanted to, we could try to set up a business where we're shipping dough to Sun City, or even going into Sun City and building a dough business there as well. But here's the kicker with that. In order to build, we go to the region, and a full build permit costs us $2 million. So we have to pay $2 million to build in this area. The other one we could look at is, we could go to Buffalo Gap, and we could say, okay, what does it cost us here? It's going to cost us $1.5 million to get a build permit in Buffalo Gap. Now, here's the other thing. See this headquarters. When we set our headquarters, we actually get to pick one region that we're going to start in, and we automatically get a full build permit there. So this one was worth $2 million. I don't see any reason why we can't build a nice little dough business right here for Sun City. So even though this map kind of pointed us toward Buffalo Gap, and I even called it Buffalo Gap, we're going to start in Sun City. So we're going to put our headquarters, because it just cost us more to go there. So why not? So we're going to go here, set our headquarters, and that actually starts the game. So all this talk I've been doing was in preparation for starting the game. So now we have a game started. We have our headquarters in Sun City, and you'll notice we have full rights. You already own the full build permit for this region. So we can build stuff here, logistical buildings, we can do anything. And just real quickly, if I said, okay, well, they take dough in Buffalo Gap, can I just ship it over there? If I want to build any kind of logistical stuff over in Buffalo Gap, I go to the region. So you can buy a logistical permit, which isn't bad, $364,000. And that allows you to build like truck depots and stuff like that. So you could easily ship stuff to Buffalo Gap. Or the full build permit's $1.5 million. But anyway, we're not going to mess with Buffalo Gap to start with. We're just going to have a nice little dough business that we think we can make money on down here in Sun City. So what we're going to do is go back to our spreadsheet and see what we have to make. We need 1 dough factory, 1 flour factory, 2 water, and 2 wheat. So we're going to, and that's going to cost us a couple $1,000,000. And then, well, let's just do all our research and see where we end up with money. So I'm going to put it on fast forward. It's already done several of the researches because you get 3, you're kind of given 3 freebies up front. So we're going to have our dough. Okay, so now we've still got $3 million left. And the one other thing I'd like to have, faster roads. And we could go with truck depot. We don't need truck depots yet. I'll show you how to get away without having them. So I do want to research faster roads. I just like them. They're not totally necessary because the other thing we're going to do is we're going to use the road that's already exists. There's no reason for us to spend a bunch of money, especially in startup mode, building a road out and putting our factories and stuff, way over here and then having to ship them a long way. We're going to build close to the city, but not too close. And the reason we're not going to build too close is player influence. This goes up and down based on, it goes up as you supply goods to the city. It goes down if you have factories too close. So if we were to say, okay, I want to build a food factory, and if I put it right there, see how it says too close? We're going to lose 2.5 weekly of influence and -5 right off the bat. So we'd go to 20, and then every week we would lose 2.5 influence points. And if we get down too low, they won't let us even build stuff in the region anymore. And not to mention, loans become more and more expensive with lower rates. So we're going to build back here a little ways away so that we're safely out of it, but still close enough to do easy shipping. And we're going to build up from what we need. So we need water. Water is the basic element. We need water for our wheat, wheat for our flour, flour for our dough, and a little water for the dough. So let's build the water that we need, which was, sorry, I keep going back and forth, 2, 3, 1, 1. Okay, we need 2 water. So we're going to go grab the gatherer's water siphon, and we're going to put a water siphon in here so that we can easily grab 2 harvesters. Notice we put this down and this popped up. This is the harvester that actually gets the water. It has to be on a square that has water. So we can put it right there. We can put one right there. Now we've got a couple of them going, and this is where I use the faster roads and really don't need to, but I really like the faster roads. I'm going to run a road out like so, and now we have a working water siphon that's going to gather water with these 2 harvesters, process it up, get it ready, and then take it where we want it to go. Right now it's not going to go anywhere. We're just going to let it run until it has, say 5 or 10 units. So I'm watching the storage. We have an overview of what's going on. See the water harvesters working up and getting full, and then they'll go off and put the water in there. So now we got 2. So we'll let that happen a couple more times. And see, the AI just put a water harvester right next to the town. All right, so let's stop right there. So now we've got a little bit of water. We need to build our wheat, and we need 3 wheat fields. So we go to the farms and we click our crop farm, and what we're going to do is we're going to have the water, and we want to eventually, our final product will be up here. We're going to have the water. I'm going to use a push model on this one. We're going to set up the wheat farm, and I'm going to hit R to rotate this. You'll probably do something different on the console, obviously. And I'm going to place 3 wheat fields within the close proximity to this, within the radius of this wheat farm. So 1, 2, 3. So now we've got the right amount of wheat, and what we're going to do is tell our water siphon, go to destinations and say, okay, I want you to go to that farm. So it's going to grab its water, take it to that farm. Now we're going to let it run a little bit longer, and we're going to gather up some wheat. So after we have a few wheat, then we'll move on to our next little piece of the puzzle. So you can see the water coming over there and being dumped into our crop farm. There we go. Now you can see these icons telling us that the crop farm is creating wheat. The water siphon is creating our water, gathering up our water. We got a little bit extra now. We're getting ahead of the game. That's great. We don't want to get too far ahead. But remember, this water is also going to our dough factory eventually. That's why it's actually getting ahead of schedule a little bit. But now we've got some wheat. We've got 4 wheat in here. Okay, so now we can go to our next one. We want to take that wheat. Let's pause again. We're going to take the wheat and we're going to send it to a food factory. And that food factory is going to create flour. So we're going to, again, we want our final product to be, let's see, we don't want to get too close, about here. So our flour can be, this will be fine. So now we're going to tell our wheat farm, I want you to go over to that factory. And in fact, just to keep it, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to call this flour 1. So this is our first flour factory. And the wheat will start coming to that flour factory and it will start creating flour. So we're going to, again, kind of hold off and we're going to let this run until we have a little bit of flour. The reason I'm holding off on all this is in startup mode, you got to watch your cash closely. I don't want the expense of the whole supply chain until I need it. So I'm going to hold off a little bit and wait until I have, well, let's see. If I was doing, go to production. If I'm doing dough, I need 4 flour to get started. So we'll let this flour run until it has 4 in its inventory, which won't be long. Once this green gets all the way up to the top again, we'll have our 4. And remember again, this is a push model where this is pushing its supply to this demand. This is pushing its supply of wheat to this demand, the flour. Okay, we've got our 4 flour. So now we can set up another factory, and I'm going to space it out 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, in case I want to put another building in there. They're still nice and close to each other. This one is going to be our dough factory. So that means that this flour right here needs a destination. It needs to take its output and take it to our dough factory. Okay, so now when it creates flour, this is going there. The other thing is we need water to go to here. So now our water siphon is going to have 2 destinations, the crop farm, and it's going to start sending to that factory that needs it. You'll notice only that factory showed up. That's because the game knows, because this one doesn't need water, but this one does. So now we're again pushing water to the wheat. We're pushing wheat to the flour. We're pushing flour to the dough, and we're pushing water to the dough. And the last thing we need to do to have a full supply chain is we need to send this off where we can sell it. So we're going to set up a destination for our dough that says we want you to go, and see this one right here, commercial. We're going to say we want you to go to the Sun City Diner. So now we have a business that's creating dough and sending it to this diner, which is over here. Okay? Now, by the way, the diner is over here. I could have set this whole thing up over here, which would have been a little bit quicker route because we wouldn't have had to go through the city. But I'm actually doing this because keep in mind, too, if we decide we wanted to sell our dough back there in Buffalo Gap, I wouldn't want to have to run way around through the city in order to have a delivery going to Buffalo Gap. But no matter, this will be quick and painless, and we should do just fine with this. So now we have a full supply chain, and what we want to see is everybody staying green all the time. That means you've got a nice balanced supply chain. But we know, because we used the spreadsheet and we got the math right, that having 2 water, 3 wheat, 1 flour, 1 dough is the right ratio. And what we'll see here is that as we're starting to send water off to this food factory as well, occasionally the water will be missing from the crop farm. But that just means that not all the fields are producing wheat at the same time. There still might be 1 or 2 of them that are producing. When it's all green like that, all 3 of them are producing. See there, here comes all those trucks out taking wheat to the flour. And we're about to have our first dough created, if we haven't already. I think this is the first pass through. And this is it. There we go. We have a supply chain that works. That's going to make 1 dough every, what's it going to do? It's going to do 1 dough or 2 dough every 40 days. And that's if it works perfectly, it'll make 2 every 40. Now we've got dough on its way to our diner. In fact, it was already there, and we sold it for $159,000. So if we look down here, we actually had a profitable month. So it's July. Well, we have potentially a profitable month. Now, what happens on this is you sell the goods the first, we did. We made $171,000. You sell the goods on the 15th and the 1st. You pay your 15th and 30th of each month. And every month has 30 days in it, by the way, even February. There is a February 30th in this game. But you sell the goods every 15th and 30th at wherever you send them. So this diner is on the 15th is going to register sale for us, and on the 30th. And remember, its demand for dough is 1 every 15. So so on the 15th it'll sell 1. On the 30th it'll sell 1 at whatever price. And see, it's down to 85%. This is because we're on such a hard setting. We're not getting a great price for this, but we're still getting enough. So we made a profit, and notice here this month we only made $11,000. Probably only sold the 1 dough rather than 2. So we'll hopefully stay close to that. Now we're going to creep back up. See here, we're making enough on the 15th to cover all of our expenses. That's a beautiful thing, because we've got building upkeep of 120-some thousand. We've got vehicle upkeep of 13,000. So our total expenses are 144,000. But we're selling just enough. When we sell one on the 15th, we cover the expenses, and then the one we sell on the 30th, if we're lucky enough to have 2 that particular month, will give us a profit. So we're going to make a tiny profit most months, and a decent, still tiny, but decent profit on the other months. So here we have a profitable startup business. So we have a simple dough business. Now, what we could do at this point is we could say, okay, I only got 1 demand here. I know I can make money on dough. I can make money if I went up here to Buffalo Gap and started a dough business and bought the rights to the full rights. Now, the full rights in Buffalo Gap would cost $1.5 million, which we don't have, but we will have fairly soon. So we could do that and just set up our own little business up here in Buffalo Gap, or we could say, okay, well, let's just buy the logistics to Buffalo Gap. So we could buy the permit that gives us the logistics, which is only $365,000, $364.18 actually. And we could afford that, but then we would have to do some research and get trucks, which would cost us, a truck depot would only cost us $400,000 and 1.8 to add capacity to it, but we could actually just run, it's going to haul 1, this is going to haul 2 with 1 truck. I'd kind of like to wait till we could get at least that extra capacity, which is 1.8 million. So if we wait a while, we can set up, buy a logistical permit up in Buffalo Gap, and expand this business. Oh, I forgot that. We also, if we're going to do that, we would have to build a whole new set of dough, a new set, double all this stuff basically, and we would get a little economy of scale. This would be the benefit of doing it up here. Let's see if we get any benefits. It was 1, 1, 2, 3. So we do. The only thing we gained was one we need 5 wheat, which we could run from one field, but that would require some research too, and 4 water, which we could run from one siphon, but that would require some research. So we are a little ways away from really being able to do that. Now, the other thing we could do very easily at this point is take out a loan. Now, what's happening here is, if you look at Sun City, our influence is growing slowly. Remember, it was at 25, and it's at 25 just because we had our headquarters. Let's just check. So if we go to clear view, see how it's 0. I suspect Buffalo Gap will be 0. Yeah, so they're all start by default at 0. Now we got the 25 points for putting our headquarters in, so they liked us for that. And now we're slowly building it up. But the main thing about that influence, besides being able to build there, is if we go to our headquarters and look for loans, if we say take out a loan, if you notice the interest rate for Sun City is 19.9%. For these other cities, it's 25%. So for us to take out a loan, we can get a better loan at Sun City because we have more influence. The rate will go down as the influence goes up all the way to the point where if we have 100 influence, we can get a loan for 5%, which is way better than 25%, way better. And while we're looking at the loans, we can also say, we don't need 10, we only need a little less. You could buy, get a slightly smaller loan. You can also change the term if you say, well, I can't afford $330 a month, but if I bounce it out there to 120 months, my rate goes way up, but I can afford $114,000. In fact, truth is, if you look at our flow here, we could kind of sort of afford that kind of a loan. So we could take out this loan, and at $114 a month, that's going to add to our expenses every month. Means that our current business wouldn't quite cover us, but we know we're going to get a second business in Buffalo Gap, and we can ship to Buffalo Gap and come up with the money to cover the loan, and that would allow us to open another business. The problem with doing that is that the amount of the loan, to cover that amount, just to break even on that transaction, well, let me put it this way. If we can assume that once we got the logistics going, we would have the same kind of profit from Buffalo Gap that we're getting here, that profit is just barely going to cover this. And when you throw in the logistics and stuff, we're not really gaining much. So it's really not, other than just to show you the logistics part, and we'll have plenty of opportunities to do that later. Oh, and by the way, here you go. Look at this. Union strike. Unsatisfied unions have caused your workers to go on strike. Food factory production is down 50%. So now we're making less money. We're slower in all of these, in these 2 factories, which means we're slower getting goods to Sun City, which means, look at this, we lost some money last month. So these events really matter. And imagine if we set it on Mayhem, where we're getting this kind of bad event just almost constantly. It would be really tough. But here we go. We're back on track here. We still made a profit. And let's just see here. So this is last month and this month. And basically, remember, we pay all of our expenses right up front. So as soon as the month clicks over to the first, boom, we get clobbered with all these building upkeeps. And then the vehicle upkeep gets added on as we use the vehicles. So our expenses get a big hit on the first, so we're negative at the start of every month, and then a little bit of incremental gain. And then when we do our sales, now see, we missed the 15th on this one because of that slow production, because of that strike. So we didn't have anything in there to sell, and hopefully we'll have something to sell on the 30th. And we didn't have anything to sell on the 30th, so again, we lost money. So we had a losing month because of that strike. We actually lost money that month. So now we should be able to, let's just see if we've got anything in here. We have 2 stored, so now we should have a good month. We should be able to sell 2. We'll sell each time. Okay, now, we just got our first contract offer. These contracts can be really helpful, or they can literally wipe you out. So this contract is a deal where they want us to deliver 14 wheat to Reno. Reno is way, let's see, I think it's way over here. Yeah, see the wheat symbol down here? Reno wants us to deliver 14 wheat. So, number one, it's going to be hard to drive all the way to Reno, particularly since we don't even have delivery trucks. We just be using the trucks from our crop farms, and they would have to drive all the way there with a load and then all the way back with another load. Plus, the whole time we're taking wheat over there, this production would shut down because our flour only has, how much does it have? It has 5 wheat, so it can go for a little bit, but then it would shut down, which would then shut the dough down, which would shut down all our profits. So for this little tiny gain in wheat and some nice influence in Reno, it's just not worth it. We're definitely not going to do that. We're not interested. In fact, that would kill us, by the way. If we were to accept that contract right now, look at this. We're losing money. We only got $900,000 in cash. Now, the good news is we haven't taken any additional loans. We've been very conservative here. But if we were to take that contract and try to fulfill it, one, we would probably fail. The only way we could fulfill it is take our money and build more crop fields, which we don't even need, and then ship all that stuff over and then destroy the crop fields, and then we get just part of our money back, and it would just be, we'd be broke. That would be the end of us. So no thank you on that contract. So we're just going to keep going as we're going. See there, we made a tiny little profit because we sold one. Now on the 15th, we'll sell another one, and hopefully we'll get 154 for it. That'll cover all of our expenses. You really have to watch what are you getting for this and what are your expenses. So we covered everything on the first half of the month. So if we had another one in there, which we don't, well, we should have one on the way. Yeah, we have a couple on the way. Good. So now we can sell another one and have a nice profitable month and be ready for the next month. So now we're looking a little better. Our wheat, by the way, this is another reason not to take that contract. Wheat production is down 25% right now because of some bad advertising. Or what is that? The wheat price is down. We don't care about the price. Price doesn't matter to us because we're using the wheat to make something else. But notice this one, pay raise. Our upkeep just went up 25% because the increase of pay to the citizens. Now, I'm fairly certain, I haven't studied this one, but these things, these red ones, the bad deals, are only in effect while they're up here. They will time out after a while. Like you can have a hurricane. Hurricanes just make everything awful, but it only lasts so long. A union strike only lasts so long. Now, here's another good thing. This is actually looks like a problem, but it's a good thing. Our wheat factory is now has full water. It's full of water. It has all the water it can take. Now, why did I say that's a good thing? Because remember we had to ship water to the wheat and the dough. I think I said wheat over here. It's dough. Our dough factory is full of water. And so now our water shipments can focus on the wheat, which will keep our wheat green and growing, and just occasionally have to take water to the dough factory whenever it uses the water to create and needs more dough, more water. Sorry. But now that we've got it filled up, we're going to have actually a much more efficient system. So now our system actually is going to be green like this, pretty close to all the time. And again, see, it's really hard to keep those crop farms going green. And one of the things we could do is actually overproduce our water a little bit to keep that going. But as long as these two stay green, particularly that one, as long as we can keep the endpoint working, what happens to the rest of them is not so much of a big deal. You'd like to have it totally efficient, and you can. It does stay very efficient, but keep that end factory going at 100%, and you're good to go. So All right, so we have managed to survive through, what is this? We're in February of year 3. We have managed to survive on the harder settings on startup mode for a couple of years now. We're making a profit, and I wanted to stop, but look at this one. Now here's one, this is interesting. 9 dough to at Matlock, or at Matlock, or I'm just going to call it at Matlock. So at Matlock, but they'll pay us 251% of the price. They would pay us $4 million to deliver those 9 dough, and we have until September. We have until September to do that. Now, could we create it that fast? Yes, we could. We can create 2 every 40 days. Getting it over there, we probably could make it. However, during the whole time that we are doing that, which is 4 or 5 months, we're making $0 because we're not shipping anything to Sun City, to the diner, so we're not getting any sales. So we would be having 0 revenue and continued costs to try to make this 4.22 million. Now I got to do a little math here because that could be worth it. Now, by the way, if we take this gamble, this is literally risking our entire business. We could go bankrupt here. But because once we have to take a bankrupt loan, which you can do, at this setting, you are toast. You are toast. And I've lost my city. Where is at Matlock? Down here, I think. Yeah, there it is. Now that's not horrible distance-wise to deliver. As it is, we would have to run the dough. The dough factory would have to do it, and it would have to make it all the way back, and no, we're not going to do it. It's too big a risk. If we can't make it, because if we come up like a few feet short of getting it there in time, we will fail. We will pay a penalty for it, and we would be broke. We would be bankrupt. That would be the end of us. So we're going to have to pass on that one. Which, by the way, in this game, more so than other games, you want some cash in reserve. You've got to have cash to cover your expenses. And one of the keys is you want to have enough cash so that when those contracts come up, you can afford to not be making an income for a while for the opportunity to make a bigger income on something else. But just don't be suckered into one of those contracts that's going to make you fail, particularly, again, on this harder level. On the normal level, after we get happy with this one, I'll go back and do the game on normal, and you'll see it's a different world. Still challenging, by the way. You can still screw up. I have definitely gone bankrupt playing normal mode. All you have to do is mess up, and sure enough, it'll happen. But I'll show you. We'll start playing in normal mode, and you'll see it's a different animal, and you can take more of the contracts. But right now, let's wrap this one up. We've got a good thing going. We are making profit. It's slow coming. We could definitely take a risk here and do it. Well, it's not really a risk. We would take a calculated risk, which we know we could handle, and do some sort of loan. We could borrow quite a bit of money, but we'd have to be able to, but our expenses would go up significantly, monthly expenses. So, you've probably heard me on, if you've watched my Railway Empire videos, you've heard me constantly saying debt is your friend. And in Railway Empire, that's absolutely true. In this game, it is absolutely true, but it's a friend who has to be handled with care. Because if you overdo it and get these expenses too high and can't meet your monthly bills, you're going to see your cash slowly dwindle and you are going to go bankrupt. And there's no way to bail yourself out because more loans won't help you. All right, so let's wrap it up right there. Hope you enjoyed that. That was pretty simple, but we did cover a push method for distributing goods. So we're pushing water to the wheat, water to the dough, wheat to the flour, flour to the dough, and then dough to the diner. You notice we don't have a warehouse in here. I'll show you how to use warehouses later. They would automate all this. We could put a warehouse right here, and everybody would automatically send all their stuff to the warehouse and automatically go to the warehouse to get their stuff. The problem, the great thing about a warehouse is it would actually make this water distribution more even. It actually works better than this method as far as distributing the stuff goes. However, it also adds significant expense because now I have the expense of driving the stuff to the warehouse and the expense of somebody going to get the stuff from the warehouse, as opposed to just the expense of driving from the water to the wheat. So just to say that one more time. Right now I'm paying to take water to the wheat. If I wanted to get water to the wheat with a warehouse, I would pay to get water to the warehouse, and I would pay for the wheat field to go get the water and bring it back to the farm. So you're paying you're handling everything twice with a warehouse. But again, it's very simple and very efficient. So I see our money's slowly creeping up. We're in August of year 3, and we're looking pretty good. And we have, and I'll say this again, we have survived. I promise you there are any number of people who are trying to play this game, trying to do the harder settings and not surviving. It is not easy at all. It took me actually a lot of practice just to figure out what to do to make this work. All right, so hope you enjoyed that one. I hope it helps you. I hope it gives you a little interest in this game. I like the game, and I'm going to say I like this potential game. It's not really a game yet because right now it just has this building and what have you. And it has a win condition where you build a prototype automobile. We'll get into that later. That's the, in theory, win condition. But what they really need for me to really push this over the top and make it a really fun game is scenarios. They need something that says build so-and-so by such and such a date or whatever. They need to give you scenarios or maybe limit. Oh, now we've got a wheat. Shoot, I keep wanting to quit, and this stuff pops up. 23 wheat to Sun City. Now, does this help us at all? Okay, this one we have to think about. 23 wheat. We're producing 2 times 3 is 6. We're producing 6 every 30 days. So in 4 months, we could fulfill this obligation. And the thing it would give us, look at that, it would give us plus 57 influence in Sun City. In other words, they would love us if we did this. That would take us up almost to 80 influence, which would make a loan from them almost bearable. Now, what it would do, of course, is eventually shut these down because there's no wheat coming in there. However, let's see if we have any. We have 12 wheat. Ooh, this is tempting. Yes, we're going to do this. We have 12 wheat here, so it can keep making flour. This can keep making dough for a while, and the dough can keep getting sold. We've got some money in the bank. It's only going to take us 4 months, and we're spending about one total expenses. I can't read that. Feedback for the developer. All your numbers are way too small. We're spending 180. You notice, by the way, loan repayment, we're starting now to pay back our startup loan. That's where that is coming from. Let's just double check that. Loans, yeah, the 40 some thousand a month is coming. We're now starting on our starter loan. We didn't have to pay it right off the bat. So our expenses have gone up a little bit. That's why our profits are a little tighter. I think we're going to do this contract because of the influence. That influence would help us with a loan down the road if we want to take the loan and try to expand our business. So all we have to do to get this contract is, first of all, we have to accept it. You hear it get signed? So now it's been signed off. We have made a commitment. So we're going to get paid $5.80 for our wheat, that's not the point. But the point is the 57 influence. And if we don't make it, we're going to lose 300 grand and we're going to lose influence. So it does matter. So here we go. We are going to close that. We're going to set up our wheat to go. Don't go to the flour, just go right into our contracts, go to the wholesaler in Sun City. That's how you fulfill contracts, and shipping stuff into the wholesaler of that city. I should have shown you that. You have your hardware store, your farmer's market, any additional shops, and you have a wholesaler. And that wholesaler, by the way, we could be, for example, buying stuff. We could buy water, in fact, but it's exorbitant price, and it would really... it would wipe you out trying to buy it from a wholesaler, and they're not consistent in their supply. So we're not going there. Anyway, we've signed up for it. you're going to go to the wholesaler. He's going to use the flour he's still got, so we'll keep working for a while. So let's just run this and see how this goes. So what we're doing is saying every time you get wheat done, instead of going to here to the flour, we want you to go all the way in here to the wholesaler, which is, where is he? Somewhere in this city. I think I see him right there. Yeah, right there. Right there in the middle. So that's not a bad drive. So there goes some. We've got our first shipment going out. And you can see our flour and dough are still being able to work because we were a little bit ahead on our supply. And good, our flour is still working. This is great. That means the dough will be able to keep working. We can actually make a profit while we're doing this contract. That's excellent. And this the color you see here is this, as you see this kind of going back, that's a countdown on the days you have left. We're in great shape here, obviously. We're at 18 out of 23, and we have 200 days left, so we are in outstanding shape. We want to get done. Now notice our flour factory is red. He's run out of wheat, so we want to get this done. It actually worked out beautifully. We barely had a shutdown on this. It definitely cost us a little money, but we were able to keep going most of the time, and we'll be through with this contract here in just a moment. One more to be delivered. There we go. All right, so we get the alert here that tells us that the contract was completed. So now what we need to do immediately is say, okay, notice what will happen with destinations. It has none because we have it on a manual setup. Once that contract was fulfilled, that destination went away. So now we want to go right back to shipping it to our flour factory. And if we continue that, now as soon as he has wheat, there we go. Now we've got our flour going again. Once that flour gets processed, we'll get our dough going again. And we made some money. We had a good month actually because we made the money from the bonus. We've managed to continue to grow our business, and we got our influence now up to 84 in Sun City. So now if we looking at a loan, remember it's 19.9%, I think it was, at 20-some percent. Now our interest rate is down to 8.2%. Now it's getting to be decent. So now we can think about taking out a loan and expanding this dough up to what we really want in this business here, which is waffles. Now remember I said berry pies. Berry pies were up there in Buffalo Gap. But down here they want waffles. Waffles are 1.52 million, about $1.5 million per item. And it's a tier 3 product, makes much more margin, much more money than this dough at a tier 2 product. So we want to expand and we've got a dough business going, we want a waffle business. So what would a waffle business cost us? It would cost us, to build one of them about $7-8 million. And And then, of course, we could reduce that a little bit if we wanted to convert our dough business into a waffle business. That would be easy enough to do, is just add on to what we already have existing. But we've got a profitable business there, so my inclination would be to let it keep running and just build a full waffle business in and of itself. So that will be what we'll do next time, is we'll play with taking a loan and expanding into the waffle business. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Rise of Industry video. Thank you.